Welcome to Hardwood Handicappers with Zach Cohen, right here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is Zachary Cohen with another episode of Hardwood Handicappers. It is Friday, January 30th, 10 a.m. Eastern, and we have a lot to get into. If you are looking for picks in the NBA for tonight, you came to the right place because I have 4 player props tonight, 2 sides and totals, and then 1 additional 2-leg parlay. So it's going to be an action-packed evening, and we're going to get right into it and start by talking about the Lakers and the Wizards, which tips off at 7 p.m. Eastern. This is a game where the Lakers are 9.5-point road favorites. The total is 229.5, and it does seem like Austin Reeves will return for Los Angeles, but the play that I have in this game is actually a player prop, and I like Alex Sarr to go over 27.5 points and rebounds at -120. I just think that he's been playing some awesome two-way basketball for this Washington team, and I really like this matchup with Los Angeles for him. He has had 28-plus combined points and rebounds in 4 of his last 5 games. 37 points and rebounds per game over the last 2 contests. So kind of picking it up a little bit just even more recently. And this Lakers team is a bottom 10 team in the league when you're talking about defense at the rim. That is where Sarr scores 50% of his points. I think that offensively, he could be in for a big night just because I do think he's going to be able to finish at the basket. We know he's also a capable jump shooter, so there could be a 3 here or there. There could be some mid-range jumpers. And then also just looking at what centers have done against this Lakers team over the last couple of weeks, it's been just barbecue chicken for these bigs. I mean, we've seen guys that are not quite as talented as Sarr go well over their numbers, including Jared Allen, Nikola Vucevic, Ivica Zubac, Donovan Clingan. Like, all of these guys have feasted against, this front line of DeAndre Ayton and Jackson Hayes. And I just don't really think tonight's going to be any different. The concern here would be, do the Lakers just put their foot on the gas offensively and find a way to just blow out a Wizards team that could also be awful defensively? It's always possible. We might not see a lot of Sarr in the fourth quarter. Hopefully that's not the case, but I do think he's going to put up some big numbers in this game. I think he's going to put up some big numbers through 3 quarters too. So hopefully he can, put a really big, dent in this number before potentially having to leave this game. But I also think that the Wizards have been a really competitive team lately. I mean, I had them last night against the Bucks on the money line. Really impressed with what I'm seeing from them lately. So I actually kind of have a lean on Washington plus the points. So I'm hoping that we do see him in the fourth quarter. But yeah, Sarr over 27.5 points and rebounds at -120 should be a really fun game to watch him. Let's move on now to the Raptors at the Magic. This is a game where the Magic are 1.5-point favorites. Totals 219.5. And this is another one where I have a player prop. I like Anthony Black over 4.5 assists in this game, which is out there at plus money odds. I saw plus 115. That's where I grabbed it. And this is just another situation where Black is going to be relied on to play a little bit bigger of an on-ball role than what we kind of expected from him early in this season. For most of this year, it was because Jalen Suggs was out. Now it's because, Suggs is in, but Franz Wagner is out. And in the 7 games this year that Black has played with Franz out of the lineup and Suggs in, he's averaging 5.4 assists per game. And in the last in 6 of those games, he has had at least 5 assists. So he's been going over this number pretty regularly. I know this is a tougher matchup. The Raptors are a top 10 team in the league. When looking at adjusted defensive rating, when looking at raw defensive rating, they are a very good defensive team. But I just kind of think that you have to bet on the talent of Black, who is a good playmaker, a good offensive player overall, and will need to step up for Orlando in a home game that it's not that they need to win it, but they would like to win it. They have not been playing very well lately, and I think they're going to rely on Black, especially with Suggs coming off another injury. Like I know he's back in the lineup. He's going to flirt with 30 minutes, but I do think that there's going to be a little bit more for Black in terms of just being the primary ball handler in this game. And there's going to be a lot of pick and rolls run for him. And I do think that he's going to end up flirting with 5 assists. It will probably end up being really tight. It'll probably be in the 4 to 6, assist range. I don't see him going crazy, but plus money odds for a player that has been really delivering all season long, I think you have to take it. Let's move on now to a side that I have, and this is the Trailblazers at Knicks, 7:30 p.m. Eastern tip. Probably one of the better games of the night. The Knicks are laying 7.5 points. The total is 224.5, and New York has been scorching hot lately. They've won 4 straight games ever since they had that kind of players-only meeting where they probably called each other out, got everything out in the open, and really kind of lit into one another about the effort that we've seen kind of over the last couple of weeks. they've been a much better team. But I do still think this is a lot of points for Portland to be catching, because while these last 4 games for New York have been strong, I don't like to overreact to a really small sample size. And if you kind of look out and look at the last 15 games, the Blazers are 9-6 with a plus 1.2 net rating. The Knicks are 6-9 with a plus 0.6 net rating. So the Portland team has been a little bit better. And the trends are also pretty strong for the Blazers coming into this game. They are 12-4 against the spread under Thiago Splitter as underdogs of 3.5 to 9.5 points this season. Also 10-4 against the spread in January. This is just a team that has been really competitive, honestly winning more often than not. And the only real concern that I have in this game is that Denny Avdia is questionable. I mean, Avdia has been dealing with the sore back. It has caused him, to miss some time here and there, but I do think that after 2 full days of rest, you should expect to see him out there. I've been wrong with Avdia specifically before, so don't hold me to that. That is the reason, though, that I'm only playing this to win 1 unit and not play it to win a little bit more, because I do love the spot for Portland. Like I said, 2 full days of rest for them. This is a 3rd game in 4 nights for New York, and the Knicks have 2 pretty important players on the injury report in Josh Hart and Deuce McBride. Don't know for sure if those guys are going to be out of this one, but I just think that in terms of rest, this is a really strong spot for the Blazers, who I think are kind of right on par with the Knicks over the last couple of weeks. This New York team is better than Portland overall, big picture, but not from what we've seen lately. So I do think this is a lot of points. And I'll also mention, just for some of the on-court stuff, I do really like what we're going to see from the Blazers defensively in this game. I mean, they have Drew Holiday for Jalen Brunson that can also try Tumani Kamara on him, a bigger wing defender if Brunson is kind of cooking against Holiday, which did used to happen when he was in Boston. So can't rule that out. But on top of all that, you have Klingon at the rim as one of the better rim protectors in the league. So I do think that Portland's defense is going to hold up nicely in this game. It's just a matter of how the offense is going to look. And I think it's going to look pretty good. I mean, the Knicks defense is just not very good this season. So I know things have looked a little bit better over the last week, but let's see if that extends into, February and March, and if they just kind of keep up what we've seen ever since that meeting. Let's move now to the Grizzlies at the Pelicans. This game tips at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. New Orleans is a 2.5-point home favorite. The total is 233.5. And I'm going back to a bit of an old faithful play as well here with Cam Spencer over 8.5 assists at minus 118. This is one that I would definitely suggest heading over to vsin.com in a few hours or whatever, just after listening to this, to see if my write-ups are up, because I do think I'm going to end up laddering Spencer in some way, shape, or form. I think the 10 plus assists, 11 plus assists are well within reason in this matchup. I know that he only had 6 assists in his last game, but he's still averaging 10 assists per game in the last 10 games that he's played without Ja Morant. And it does, it will be another game without Ja Morant. It's also going to be a game that seems like Ty Jerome will miss, even though it looks like his return is on the horizon for Memphis. He is doubtful for this game, which is kind of an improvement on his status, based on the fact that he has not played this season. But it does look like he will be out here. So that means a bigger role for Spencer. And it's a big role against the Pelicans team that has been miserable defensively this season. They're 24th in the league defending spot-up jumpers, 29th defending in transition, and also 29th defending at the rim. So it's a perfect matchup for this Memphis offense, even with some bodies missing. And it's Spencer that's going to be relied on to kind of stir the drink and kind of get these guys to go. So I really think that 9 assists for him really feels like something that's going to happen, especially given the way that he's been seeing the floor lately. And then I do think that there's a chance that we end up seeing 10, 11, and maybe even 12. Like, I think that this is going to be a game to be somewhat aggressive with laddering, maybe not risking too much, but at least trying to win a little bit more. So let's see. I'm going to dive into that a little bit after this, but as of right now, the only play I have in is Spencer over 8.5 assists. We're getting ready for Big Game 60 with a big deal to match. Save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription when you sign up using promo code HARDWOOD, all one word. Become a VSiN Pro annual subscriber and bet smarter all year long with full access to our daily best bets from VSiN hosts and guests, real-time DraftKings and Circa betting splits, AI-powered prop tools and matchup analysis, 24/7 video and full show replays on the VSiN Watch app, plus all of our betting guides and expert picks for the Super Bowl and upcoming March Madness. Don't miss out on this big game deal. Visit vsin.com/subscribe and promo code HARDWOOD, HARDWOOD, to save $60 off a VSiN Pro annual subscription today. That's vsin.com/subscribe. As I mentioned, I'm going to do a little bit more with that Cam Spencer play over at the website. You should be a VSiN Pro if you want to go over there and see what I'm doing with that. So make sure you check out the website, see what we have to offer. We do every single sport. So it's not just the NBA, but we have you covered with NBA picks on a nightly basis. We have you covered with NBA trends and analysis from Steve Mackinnon, my talented colleague. And obviously on our shows, our VSiN network, we're hitting the NBA all the time. So it's a great time to be a VSiN Pro, especially with March Madness right around the corner. Let's move now to the Cavaliers at the Suns. This is a game where the Cavaliers are 3.5-point road favorites. The total is 220.5. And this is a game where I do think Cleveland's the right side. I'm not going to play it, not just because I don't like going against my Phoenix team, but it's also just a tough thing to do going against the Suns right now, given how well they're playing. But the play that I do have in this game is Oso Ighodaro over 12.5 points, rebounds, and assists at -130. If you want to go over 13.5, you could do that at plus money. I did flirt with that as idea as well, because Ighodaro has just been so good on the second legs of these back-to-backs. And he's now at 16.7 combined points, rebounds, and assists per game when playing back-to-backs this season. And he's had 19 plus in 4 straight and 5 of the last 6. The reason that he does so much better on back-to-backs is because the Suns have somewhat of an injury-prone center in Mark Williams. And when they play back-to-backs, instead of not playing him, they just play him a little bit less minutes. And that means a bigger role for Ighodaro, who has been really good this season. I mean, at least on the defensive end, he's turned into one of the better big man defenders in the entire NBA. And that has earned him a big spot in Jordan Knott's rotation. And he does deliver with numbers as well, because he's a good play finisher, he's a good passer, and he's going to make his mark on the boards. It also helps that the Cavaliers will be without Evan Mobley here. That's one of their 2 bigs. That is the reason that Cleveland usually plays with a massive starting 5 that includes both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But with no Mobley, they become a little bit smaller. That makes the matchup a little bit better for Ighodaro. So I think as long as Ighodaro can just avoid cheap fouls, this is a game where we're going to see him kind of fill up the box sheet. And yeah, like I said, I do think that the Cavaliers are the right side. Even with no Mobley, Garland, Strus, it's still the Suns playing their 3rd game in 4 nights in the second leg of a back-to-back, and they're coming off a big win over Detroit last night. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something of a letdown spot, but I will say, and I will warn you, this Suns team doesn't really have letdown spots. Like, they've been so good at just being intense every single night, bringing it defensively, showing effort on both ends of the floor. And I do think that Jalen Green might be back tonight for the Suns. So that's another thing that could give Phoenix a boost. So that's the reason that I didn't end up playing Cleveland as one of my money line parlay anchors, which I always kind of look for. That is actually going to be a team in the next game we'll talk about. But yeah, it's a interesting spot, because I do think that there's a lot to like about the Cavaliers, but I wouldn't want to go against the Suns right now. The next game that I want to talk about, we will pair the final 2 together. Sorry, not the final 2 together, the next 2 together. Clippers Nuggets at 9 p.m. Eastern, where the Nuggets are 6.5-point home underdogs. Totals 209.5. And then the game we're pairing it with is the Nets and Jazz at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. The Jazz 2.5-point home favorites. The way that I am playing this one is a parlay with the Clippers money line and the Jazz on an alternate spread of +7.5. And like I just said, I always kind of look for a money line parlay anchor on the evening. I think that Los Angeles is the right one tonight. Kawhi Leonard is questionable tonight. Not sure he's going to play, but it's worth noting he's been questionable a lot lately, and he's been playing through it. But I just kind of think that this is a really good spot for the Clippers, with them having come off of 2 full days of rest, going against a Nuggets team that's playing a 3rd game and in 4 nights and a back-to-back. And just overall, if you kind of look at what these teams have done in January, the Clippers are 11-3 straight up with a net rating of +4.4. Nuggets 9-6 with a net rating of -1.8. I think we've all kind of praised Denver for the work that they've done without Nikola Jokic this season, and they do deserve a lot of praise. I mean, Adelman has been an awesome coach for them, and what they've been able to do with guys in and out of the lineup, it's not even just the Joker. It's, Murray's missed a lot of games. Aaron Gordon's now out for the next 4 to 6 weeks, so he's going to miss a ton of time. Christian Brown's been out. It does seem like there's a chance that some guys return tonight, but I do think this is a really difficult ask for them to go out and beat one of the hottest teams in the league at less than full strength in a bad rest spot, with Los Angeles being very well rested. I think that the Clippers really should win this game. I don't know if they're going to do it by margin, but I do think they're going to get the job done. And then the second leg of this with the Jazz alternate plus 7.5 is really that I have a huge lean on the Jazz overall, but I just am a little bit too big of a coward to lay the 2.5 points because the Nets are a very well coached team under Jordi Fernandez. I don't really like going against him very often, but when the Jazz are favored under Will Hardy, 36-25 straight up, also 27-18 straight up as home favorites under Hardy. This is also a third game in 4 nights and a back-to-back for Brooklyn, so they're not going to be very well rested. The only reason, though, that I ended up leaning 7.5 with the Jazz and not a little bit less is that Larry Markkinen is out for Utah, and that's obviously a really big loss. He is their best player. Just an offensive mismatch, waiting to happen for all teams because of his ability to shoot the three at his size, his ability to move off the ball and just kind of impact games with his shooting and his shooting gravity. They are going to miss that with the Jazz, but they should be used to playing without it because he misses a ton of games. But I do think this is a game that Utah has a really good chance of winning outright. I wouldn't be surprised if Brooklyn rests a lot of guys. And I do think that the Jazz, at the very least, should cover this alternate number. And this parlay is minus 115. Usually I'm giving these alternate parlays out at way less favorable numbers. So it's usually like minus 130, minus 133, things like that. So this is a really easy one to kind of stomach in terms of price. Hopefully it gets the job done. And we're going to close out our picks for tonight with the Pistons taking on the Warriors, 10 p.m. Eastern. This is a game where Golden State has a pretty big rest advantage. They are, coming off of no game last night, while Detroit is coming off a game against Phoenix last night. It's their third game in 4 nights, so they will be a little bit tired probably. But this is a game where the Warriors are 2.5 point favorites. The total is 224.5. And my look here is to the under on 224.5. I just think even with Detroit coming off a game last night, you're going to get a strong effort from this team defensively. This is the second best team in the NBA, right after OKC when looking at defensive rating. And I do think that while they played last night, the fact that it was a blowout in favor of the Suns actually ended up meaning more rest for some of the Pistons players. Cade played 34 minutes. That's a lot, but not a lot for a superstar. Duran only played 28. Harris played 30. Duncan Robinson played 30. I think that these guys are going to be ready to go. And like I said, this is one of the best defensive teams in the league. The Warriors are a team with a defensive identity as well, even though it's a little bit tougher with no Jimmy Butler. And I do think that just overall, this is going to be a slow, ugly game that just kind of ends up being not that fun to watch. So I would say that this is like a set it and forget it type of play. But yeah, I do think it's going to end up being somewhat slow. Neither of these teams are in the top 10 of the league in pace of play, but both of them are in the top 12 of the league in defensive rating. Obviously, like I just said, Pistons number 2. They're doing some of the heavy lifting there, but the Warriors are 12th in the NBA. They're a good defensive team. And overall, the under is 35-27-1 in Detroit's meetings with teams with winning records under JB Bickerstaff. So when they do play good teams, they tend to end up in physical, kind of grinded out affairs. I think that this will be no different. Obviously, it's tough going under on a game with Steph Curry because he could just light you up, and it's just not fun to watch him making shots when you're hoping that he misses. But I do think this is going to be a game that ends up being somewhat ugly. So under 224.5, not even that low of a number. So I think it's very reasonable. But that is all for the picks for tonight. I do want to do some takeaways from last night, just 2 very quick ones. I think that the first one is that the Timberwolves beat the Thunder 123-111 in a game that I think, OKC had a lot of reasons to feel like they should have won that one in terms of rest. But Minnesota just continues to be a really odd team. They had the losing streak heading into this week where they were losing to bad teams, looked terrible, and then they go out and beat the Thunder for the second time this season. And it was a relatively healthy OKC team outside of J-Dub being out. They had Hartenstein back. They had Chet. They had SGA. I think there were a lot of reasons to believe, like I said, that OKC should have won that game. Minnesota finds a way to get it done. And I think that still this is a team that really needs to be, paid attention to in the Western Conference, not just because there's probably a trade coming down the pipeline, but because also they are 7th in the league in adjusted net rating at plus 3.6. Right outside the top 10 in offensive rating, 6th in the league in defensive rating. And I just think they have the advanced stats profile of a borderline contender. So I don't think that a lot of people talk about them in the Western Conference outside of, maybe this show or some of the VSiN shows. I don't know. But we have given them out to win the Western Conference and win the NBA title. Like I said, I'm hoping that they do make a trade down the line, but this team is really good right now. And I just don't think that people realize it because they do mix in some bad losses. They tend to play up and down to their competition, but that shouldn't be a problem once you do ultimately get to the postseason when you're only playing good teams. So I think they're going to rise to the occasion there. But yeah, keep an eye on this team throughout the trade deadline because they have been now mentioned in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes. I wouldn't be stunned if they find a way to get him. And they've also been talked about as trying to get a guard. I've mentioned that, like, my favorite target for them, Kobe White. I think that's somebody that could really take this team to the next level. Even though he's gone under on our point totals the last 2 nights, I forgive him. I do think he's going to help Minnesota if he ends up there. Either that or like Colin Sexton in a smaller role. I think he could help them as well. But I do think they're going to add some help in the guard rotation and think it's going to make them a better team. The other takeaway that I have is the Suns beating the Pistons 114-96 last night because it was a blowout victory for Phoenix. Dylan Brooks goes for 40 in a game where they were giving out Dylan the Villain t-shirts. So it was like Dylan Brooks night in there. He is really playing well for this Suns team. I think a lot of people have him as an all-star this season. I don't think he's going to end up on the all-star team. I think he'll end up being one of the last guys that misses it, but he has been fantastic, and the Suns have been fantastic. I mean, playing without Booker and Green and blowing out the best team in the Eastern Conference shows you how good this Phoenix team is. And I think a lot of people have waited a really long time to accept it, but they're now 29-19. They are 11th in the NBA in adjusted net rating. And I really think that the reason I wanted to talk about this is because Jordan Ott at Coach of the Year at plus 400 has to be the favorite right now. I know that JB Bickerstaff is at the top of the list currently. He's done a fantastic job with the Pistons, but Detroit had something to build on from last season. There were expectations this year. They're just kind of living up to them. Phoenix has completely flipped the narrative of the entire organization. This Suns team was supposed to be a 30-win team or maybe even less. And, everyone was joking about how they might end up with a top 5 pick and then not have that pick because they've traded it. They've traded all of their assets. But this team is now looking like a potential 50-win team and somebody that I don't think anybody in the Western Conference is going to want to play because defensively, they're a top 5 group in the NBA. I know the numbers might not back that up in terms of adjusted net rating, but they do in the half court. And this is a team that I think is feisty as all hell on that end of the floor. And offensively, you have Devin Booker to kind of, make things happen for a team that might be missing a little bit in terms of on-ball creation, but has shooters, has role players that know exactly what their roles are. Everybody is comfortable kind of creating for themselves in spurts. And overall, Jordan Ott's system just empowers everybody to play their style and play fearless basketball. And that's why you're seeing breakout years out of like everybody. I mean, Colin Gillespie has been sensational all season long. Not a most improved player of the year candidate, but a guy that in a normal year where there aren't multiple guys that have made star leaps would be talked about a little bit more for this award, but people notice what Gillespie's doing. And then you have guys off the bench like Jamari Bouye, who's also been awesome, like with zero expectations. Somebody that is like a 26-year-old second-year player in this league that everyone kind of gave up on, but he comes out all of a sudden and looks awesome defensively, looks great offensively. And it's just a testament to like what the system Ott has put in and the way he's been able to get through to this team. And offensively, they are 15th in the league in adjusted offensive rating. That's not that great. That is the weakness for this team outside of Booker right now. And overall, I think is that the Suns are a little bit easy to guard. If Jalen Green ever comes back healthy and could stay on the floor for an extended period of time, that changes because Green is an explosive scorer, whether that's from behind the arc, driving to the basket where he uses his athleticism, creating off the dribble, scoring in transition, all of it. He has a full arsenal offensively that he has tapped into at times throughout his career, but never fully. And I think that the deficiencies with him are shot selection and defense, but it's just hard not to trust that he's going to figure it out completely in Ott's system because everybody else has. Ott has kind of earned that benefit of the doubt. And I just kind of think that Ott is going to get his flowers come the end of the year just because, like I said, the expectations for this team compared to the reality, there isn't a team like it in the NBA this season. This is the story of the year, whether you like it or not. I know that the Celtics are probably feeling very close to that, but their win total was a little closer to 40, and they still had, a really strong infrastructure there. Phoenix was supposed to fall apart and has instead turned into a very good Western Conference team. And like I said, one that beat the best team in the Eastern Conference last night. I'm not sure that the Suns wouldn't be the best team in the Eastern Conference this season. They give Pacers vibes. I've said that kind of all year, starting with like 2-3 weeks into the season. And it was a little bit crazier when I said it then, but now with 48 games of body of work, it is like a Pacers-like team or a Pacers-West team where it's just a really well-coached group, a really deep group, and one where you have your star in Booker or Halliburton, but then everybody else can do their jobs. It's been a special season in Phoenix. I'm really enjoying watching the team. So even if they don't win awards, still fun for me because the last few years with, the older, injury-prone big three of Booker, Durant, and Beal, was tough to watch. It was tough to watch. And that's crazy because, Durant was so good in Phoenix and I absolutely loved his time in the Valley, but man, it was tough with the rest of the team not playing well, with Beal being a no-show for his entire time in Phoenix. It was a crazy kind of flip from last year watching the team to this year in terms of just fun. But let's recap our Friday best bets now. We have a lot of them. We have Alex Sarr over 27.5 points and rebounds at -120 versus the Lakers. Anthony Black over 4.5 assists plus 115 versus the Raptors. Blazers plus 7.5 at -107 versus the Knicks. Cam Spencer over 8.5 assists at -118 versus the Pelicans. Warriors Pistons under 224.5 at -110. Oso Iguodala over 12.5 points, rebounds, and assists at -130 versus the Cavaliers. And then we have a parlay of Clippers money line versus the Nuggets and Jazz alternate plus 7.5 versus the Nets at -115. By the way, attention to any listeners who are new to VSiN. Sign up for free now. Our daily newsletter is a great way to catch up. Delivered straight to your inbox every morning, VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, and strategies for the day's betting menu. Sign up for free now at vsin.com/newsletter and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That's vsin.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. But yeah, we have a bunch of plays for tonight. We had a winning night last night. If you head over to vsin.com and see what I added a little bit after the show, because I did end up adding a few plays that ended up winning, and that ended up putting me in the green for the first night in a while. So it was nice to get back in the win column. Still up a little bit on the season, still having a good year, and still really confident with the process. So hopefully we end up having a winning night tonight. Would love to go 4-3 or 5-2. That'd be awesome. Anything more than that, that'd be gravy, but hopefully not a terrible night as we head into the weekend. But we will have you covered with picks over the weekend. There will not be a podcast until Monday, but I will have picks written up over at vsin.com. So like I said, great time to be a VSiN pro. Head over to our website, see what we have to offer. And Saturday and Sunday, late morning West Coast time, you will see picks from me, maybe a little bit earlier if there are early games. So just head over there. I'll tweet out my picks as well. So follow me at Betting on X. But like I said, we'll be back with the podcast on Monday. I'm looking forward to all of these games. I'm looking forward to a weekend of hoops. And yeah, make sure you check out what we have to offer over at vsin.com. Have a great weekend.